enjoyed the food. Let's go ahead with the technical session, that is handicraft-based livelihood in urban centers of India, need for a paradigm shift. For this session, I request Dr. Madhura Datta to moderate the session from Culture and Development. She's Culture and Development Specialist. For this session, I request our panelists to be on the stage. Dr. Nidhi Pundir, Vice President, Global CSR, HCL Foundation. Gauri Malik, Founder, Shirohi. And Dr. Megha Vansalkar, Founder, TISA. Now I hand over the session to Dr. Madhura and the panelists. Please have it. Thank you.
Can I use this mic?
Mics are there.
Good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to all of you on this very cold Delhi afternoon. I have a broken voice. Excuse me for that, please. The cold of Delhi. So we have a very esteemed panel here, and our topic is on urban handicrafts. How do we look at a paradigm shift to bring it to the fore? So before I go over to the panelists with my questions, I would just like to put a backdrop to the topic to be able to integrate what we will be hearing from our esteemed panelists in a little while. So the sector of handicrafts, we know and we say this very often, that it is part of creative manufacturing or creative economy. So creative economy is one of the most dynamic and expansive sectors in today's world economy that we all know, that we all talk about. The robustness of the creative economy of a country depends on its existing cultural, natural, and social capital and human capital. And not only that, its cultural and political history as well, and its demography. That way, India has an enormous wealth of handicrafts. When I say handicrafts, I include handlooms in that as well. And it has the skill base for a huge creative and cultural industry, having very strong links historically with ancient trade routes and trade practices. So we have been in the business since a very, very long time. Since this session focuses on urban handicrafts, I would like to look at a few traditional creative industries with you, which are very famous worldwide and which are essentially traditional urban handicrafts, so to say. For example, we all know about the Pashmina Kani shawl of Kashmir. Its genesis happened in Srinagar city. So it's a city craft, traditional craft. You know the potters and the sculptors in Kolkata, in Kumottuli. They are a city-based craft and a traditional handicraft community. The Bidri ware originates from the city of Bidar. The wood and lac turnery originates from the Channapatna town. Chicken curry is a Lucknow city-based craft. Later, it has shifted to the rural areas. Khurja pottery, we all know, it has a GI tag. Moradabad is known as Brass City. Saharanpur is famous for its woodwork. Panipat in Haryana has been called the city of weavers for a very long time. So we see that though our focus has been on rural, and most of the time we are used to talking about rural handicrafts, rural communities, rural traditional practices, it has been very, very urban since a very long time as well. So it is well proven fact that the handicrafts industries of India have been strong contributors towards the region's economic and social development and hence need to be integrated with national policies and programs and a strong public-private partnership. However, the urban informal sector of handicrafts comprises a large part of the unorganized non-agricultural sector, which is fraught with lack of education, poverty, insecurity, lack of access to sanitary living conditions, discrimination and social exclusion, hazardous environmental conditions, and lack of voice in governance. The dimensions of urban poverty can be broadly divided into residential vulnerability, social vulnerability, and occupational vulnerability. And these three areas of vulnerability are strongly linked to the concept of cultural ecology, or the habitat in which these traditional urban communities are living. And the sustainability of the habitat leads to the sustainability of the communities. So how do we ensure that that equilibrium exists, that harmony exists between the habitat and the communities who are depending on their habitats for both economic, social, and cultural identity? Achieving sustainable development in this domain therefore necessitates proper urban planning, effective regulations, social justice, and equity, amongst others. So there are various schemes of the government for improving urban poverty, for alleviating urban poor, for artisans, focusing on artisans, craftspersons, focusing on infrastructure, sanitation, housing. Even the National Urban Livelihoods Mission is there. But the question, the broader question is, what I would like to pose here overall is that, are the cultural and creative handicrafts-based industries of urban India fully recognized as a source of capital for economic, social, and cultural development and empowerment? Are these assets effectively being used? And how can communities be empowered and poverty alleviation achieved and strengthened to sustain our cultural capital and the social and economic capital which comes from it for human well-being? So there are lots of dimensions and strands to this topic, and we have a diverse panel with very different expertise, which I think is a very great way of putting together our the discussion and our questions. So with that, I would like to quickly introduce the panelists very briefly and then go over to the questions without any more of my deliberation. So we have in the panel Dr. Nidhi Pundhir. She's an international humanitarian services and socio-economic environmental development specialist. She leads the global CSR agenda for HCL Tech and heads HCL Foundation, which is the CSR arm of HCL Tech in India. We have Gauri Malik. She's a finance and economic graduate from UK's Warwick Business School. She began her career as an investment banker at Deutsche Bank, after which she founded the Skilled Samaritan Foundation in early 2012. Sirohi is the trademark brand of SSF. And we have Dr. Megha Fansalkar. She's an urban regional planner with an experience of 20 years in development sector. She's a social entrepreneur and founder of TISER, supporting rural artisans across 18 states, thus helping thousands of artisan families earn livelihood through entrepreneurship model. So I would first like to go to Dr. Nidhi. So my question to you is, how does CSR support the livelihood generation and strengthening of urban artisans' livelihood? Does urban poor skilling program get as much priority as rural programs? How do you plan or handle this?
Thank you. Namaskar. Good afternoon. I know it's very cold, but a warm setup, as I can see. And congratulations to Access once again for this amazing summit. I think you do a great job of bringing all of us together. Um, I think that's a very good question because some of us who took an early step in terms of looking at urban communities in totality, because most of our centers are located in urban areas, in the big metros, so as to say. And when we began to write our own CSR strategy, of course, within the larger, of course, I would just take a little pause that let's keep the law nuances aside for some time because that came in later, that came in 2015 16. And many of us already had our foundations by then, which were fully inspired by what our own employees told us because they become our first source of information, and in our case it is techies. So you can just imagine that techies who are completely into technology, techies who are young, techies who are way ahead in terms of their thinking and providing solutions to the larger issues, they also have a heart. Many people just think that technology is heartless, but we live with them and we interact with them, and they're the ones who actually made the first corpus, which we call as power of one, which is rupee 1 per day from their own payroll, which they brought together, and they began to work for the immediate neighborhoods on their own. There was no foundation, there was no HCL foundation at that time. This was way back in 20s, early I would say. And then 2011 is when we actually registered it as HCL Foundation. Law came in much later, and the funds, etc. That's a different story. But the crux here was finding solution to the problem of urban poverty, that why some of us have jobs, why some of us have these amazing places to sit and work from, and why there is this ultra poor community next door. So from the high rises, when you look down, there are always slums. From the roads, when you look around, and shape of India is changing. I think now in 2024 we have a very new and a bright India which is there, but behind that is still that community. So when some of our employees used to go inside and go deeper, what is it that we do in order to have them come out of this regular poverty situation is livelihood. And how do you do livelihood? Because you can't skill people overnight. You can't bring them into technology, or you can't kind of suddenly change the qualifications, etc. You find what is it that they have. So when we got inside the slums, when we got inside these households, we realized that there was this piece of art. There was something that they had. It was just a matter of how do we really upgrade the whole thing to be able to bring it to the market. And that's how this whole mission started. In 2016, we definitely gave it shape, and we have skill and livelihoods as our one big vertical under CSR. What we've been able to do is that we've been able to also satisfy the requirements of the law later on, the 2% obligation. Many people ask me that how do you really bring in, because it is has to be rupee measurable, it has to be return on investment, it has to provide corporate that visibility, it has to be something where impact can be measured, etc. So CSR provides you that larger framework of accountability, which some of us have been able to sit together, and then we have a highly professionally qualified team that we have decided to put behind the mission. Now, this entire discourse of artisans, which all of us, I think, in this room, I need not talk about it, and I'm sharing the panel with amazing entrepreneurs on both my sides, so I should not touch that aspect. But then, inside the corporates, when you sit, and I come from hardcore international development sector, where I was coming from community side, but when I was inside the corporate, I was like, where are artisans? Where is art? where is, how do we do the connect, and this is a high paced corporate where we are thinking revenues and this and that, and how do we bring it inside the boardroom and discussion. And that, I think, has been the challenge as heading CSR. But then we started to travel the path. We were like, what is it that we can do? Can we bring them on one portal? Can we think of an e-commerce market which will connect them with the global community? Can we fund that from CSR? And the first question was, of course, our legal asked that how does it become CSR? Because CSR, as people would visualize, okay, some schools and some children and some hospitals and some dialysis, all kinds of things which are service, some old age home. But how do you really do an e-commerce market? And then we justified it because most of our artisans were below poverty line. Most of our the families from where they came were struggling for their livelihood, and you actually define your beneficiary quite well. You give it a definition. And then we launched the portal My eHeart, which all of you were watching, and now it's a global portal. In fact, we had dozens of saris recently gone to London museum, and they were displayed over there. And that's the connect we've been able to make using technology. So I think one can, and it's beyond that, I'm just giving one example, but it is a high opportunity sector as far as CSR is concerned. It is surely something which can fuel the entrepreneurial spirit, which can exchange notes between corporates and the artisan community, and of course facilitators, as we have the room is full of such facilitators. But then how do you really ensure that ROI is the key, return on investment? Because this is the only sector which is faced with that challenge, as we call it, where you will be asked the question, are you doing business or are you doing real CSR, so as to say? And that's where I think that question of understanding ultra poor, understanding the urban landscape, understanding which community you are helping, ensuring at the end of the day that you're able to report that result, and then you scale up. I think we've scaled up significantly. We've scaled up almost 20 times than when we started, even within the livelihoods segment.
So that's it's working. That's very, very interesting and very encouraging as well, especially for those people who are in the sector and trying to make things work in the sector, looking for funds, looking for support, looking for all kinds of positive things in the ecosystem so that things work. I just wanted to ask you, related to what you were speaking about, that you will have your implementation partners as well, right? So, and handicrafts is a sector where presenting a change takes quite some time. So it's a matter of at least 3 to 4 years where you start seeing results. If it is really a sector, I mean, a community which is where you're trying to make a difference from a very low level. So as CSR, what kind of issues, or how do you handle the ROI of the funds that you give out, and how do your implementation partners respond to that in this kind of a sector?
So I think I have my team here, and they really don't like me for all the reviews, and then the partners subsequently, because that is a challenge that, see, understand where a CSR head would be coming from. This is surely a position which is created eventually under the law, and there is a compliance requirement here. We have to see that as a shared responsibility, and anybody who would want to partner with a corporate under CSR, philanthropy is a different story, which is also beautiful for artisans, and we should not ignore that space, because there's a great opportunity there also. But the moment we are partnering within CSR, there is a collective responsibility of being accountable for what we are doing. And therefore, measurability is critical. And that's where I think the expertise, so as to say, of the core team comes in, that how do you really apply those measurability matrices. But my experience has been that if your intent has been something to uplift, if your intent has been quite clear that you are looking at SDGs, you are looking at the national indicators, you are looking at how do artisans come in the picture, how do you really still kind of remain focused, I haven't seen that big a challenge. But then some of the things which I said as strategy we've been able to do is that we've been able to own the design in house quite a bit, in the sense that what is it that we want to do and how do we really want to report it is something that we sit across the table and we decide that. Implementation partners, I wouldn't call it, it's rather partners, because it's just not about because we also see exactly are they, see, if I were to be honest, this is also being done as a business in the communities. I mean, it is almost like corporate. It's almost like somebody making profits, but are those profits being made ethically, and is the entire margin going to the artisan or not, is what some of us under CSR are going to evaluate carefully. So vested interests need to be checked, because then there is no difference between not for profit and for profit. So the moment we talk CSR, it is a not for profit sector. A question that ministry will also ask us is that why are you doing this? Why are you actually supporting an e-commerce platform? Then we always say, no, it's a free of cost platform which we are funding under our CSR funds, which is directly benefiting the artisans, and our partners are facilitators over there. So while we want to ensure that our teams within the partners are also well paid, they are also taken care of, all of that becomes the program costs, but we still need to put the artisans in the forefront. And that is where I think the other thing I must tell you is that we've been able to quite successfully do is that we've been able to completely expose this to our own clients. We have clients, because we are also A to B, B to C, the whole thing. If you look at it, our clients are intrigued with the kind of, they are directly coming to the display centers and they're directly able to touch and feel the product. Imagine somebody flying in from Europe, somebody from US, Australia, a Disney kind of, or I don't want to take the names of all the clients, but they are actually an oil company or a banking company, somebody who has somebody experiencing Madhubani painting first hand. It's a great magnet for us also as relationships with our own clients. So, but how do you do that? How do you really bridge the gap? Is where you do need regular thinking, you need regular engagement, you need to kind of connect. And now our artisans come to our campus, and they are the ones who are actually talking directly with the banking clients. So it's this one CEO artist, I would call her a CEO of one sector or one segment of a CBO, talking to another CEO of a bank, of a multi-billionaire kind of a company. So that's the bridge I think beautifully can be made under CSR, and we're so glad we are able to do that. And it's just a prototype that we are testing. Open share, we can always share it, but the transformation and the hope and the what you see in the eyes of that particular CBO is what we kind of gain at the end of the day.
That's a wonderful point. That's a very beautiful way of putting it, because we all understand that the kind of bandwidth that corporates have to really reach out to their clients worldwide is huge, and to encash on it, social enterprises or small entrepreneurs cannot do it. But there is such a huge scope to establish the premiumness of handicrafts of India. So thank you, Nidhi. This is wonderful. I will now move on to you. So my question to Megha, so there are two aspects that I would like you to highlight. One is you work with both rural and urban artisans. What are the differences, opportunities, and challenges that you see in these two sectors? Because we understand that in both urban and rural, there are many challenges, but there are also different kind of opportunities that they can avail. So with your experience, what have you seen? What is your experience of the differences in working opportunities, challenges in urban and rural communities?
Thank you. Good afternoon. Sorry for this post lunch torture. I was a horse rider and I used to do horse riding for almost 10 years. And we had a called Monday morning syndrome. So when you go for Monday morning for the horse riding, the horse used to say, "Yaar, kahan se aa gaye?" Because Saturday, Sunday was a holiday for the horses also. So खाने का बाद का session ऐसे ही होता है यार ये कहाँ से आ गए. But anyway, I am also facing that same syndrome right now because I've had my lunch. So yes, so no. It's a syndrome which happens in the body. It has nothing to do with who is talking, who is speaking, who is listening. It's irrespective. So basically, I put on three different type of hats together and try to juggle up between the three. Whether I do justice or not, only time will tell. So I've been into development sector for quite long now, and my colleague Anjani is sitting there from Gates Foundation, and we have been working together for so long time. Gaurav I've been working with for some long time. Then I am also an urban and regional planner, so I work in the urban sector also, and then as an entrepreneur. So all three have different kind of potential, different kind of tasks, and the beauty is that I try to put all together, and maybe that is also one good reason we feel that I have been able to do some justice to the sector, or maybe scratch the surface slightly harder. So as far as rural and urban is concerned, yes, as an entrepreneur we started with mostly rural sector. Rural sector, the dynamics is slightly different. One, I found that they were very traditional art forms, and they've been doing one generation, two generations, and very organized. Like Madhubani will do all Madhubani, Pattachitra will do all Pattachitra, Sambalpuri is doing weaving. So it's traditionally defined how they work and what they work. But somehow there is a problem in terms of institutions, in terms of market-led products, because they are far away from the consumers. And that is how developing a rural cluster and empowering them is a story in itself, because minimum wages, and they get some good opportunities in the harvesting season in the field, and suddenly you have an order and they'll say ki the rice harvesting chal raha hai abhi. So all these things are, lot of dynamics are there. But traditionally in India, rural crafts are much popular. But why we also shifted to urban, because we realized that urban women and skilling in urban is also critical, because slums are coming up very fast. Mumbai has a 60% of slum population, and there is a need of lot of livelihood there. And me being with only one focus is mind, that livelihood is important. For me, it was without boundaries. I never thought it was rural, it was urban, and of course a blanket approach cannot be there for both of them. But I try to put how urban works, so and how we have been successful doing in urban. So I realized one thing: urban is all about working with the urban local body. If you want to scale, otherwise you can set up your centers, put some 50 women, do something. That's fine. But if you really want to scale in urban areas, you have to have a friendship with the urban local body, because they govern the place. Be it Satara, be it Surat, be it any urban local body, smaller or bigger, ABCD town. And that's how we partnered a lot with the urban local bodies wherever we're working. This helped us to give us a lot of scale. And second, we also try to understand the pain points which a urban local body has. So just to give a small example, in urban areas, rack picking is very, very informal livelihood, and I've been talking about rack picking lectures, value chain, quite a long now. And now we have over a period trying to bring rack pickers in the craft value chain. I did some research on that, I did some papers on that, and how we can bring waste to wealth as a part of craft, how we can bring rack pickers as a part of the value chain. And that is where you can align with the urban local body. The other area of urban local body work is urban, the partnerships is very, very important. In rural areas, the partnership doesn't matter much. You partner with an SHG, you partner with artist producer group, and the partnership ends there. You give them institutional support, working capital, design development, supply chain support, and the supply chain would start. Urban is slightly different because you have to partner with bigger partners which have a facility where rural urban women can come, they can work. Urban infrastructure is very costly. So then we partnered with Tata Power, we partnered with Mavim, we partnered with MSRLM institutions which are in semi-urban places, and that's how we are supporting 50 to 100 urban centers in Maharashtra and other locations, generating a livelihood for them. And the partnership is very unique. You have traveled some journey, infrastructure belongs to you, women belong to you, catchment belongs to you, and the management belongs to you. We bring livelihood because we are good at that. We think we are good at that. And that's how the partnership has really worked so well. And of course, urban local bodies has supported a lot. Like recently, we are setting up a supply chain for Mavim products across Maharashtra, in Mumbai, in 3 of their warehouses. So the beauty is that warehouse belong to BMC, right? But BMC has a strength in creating a warehouse. Is a rich body, they have infrastructure. They have nothing to do with anything else. Mavim sets up the warehouse. They give Mavim the warehouse. They won't give it to us because we are a private not-for-profit. So Mavim and BMC collaborate. But Mavim being a government body, they do not have the bandwidth to set up a supply chain, to set up a IT based of setup, to set up the infrastructure. So then they come to us that, can you run this supply chain center? Can you design this? Can you handle 5 such supply chain centers in our 5 urban local bodies? We say, wonderful. It's a beautiful opportunity. BMC gives us the place, so there is no rent. They gives us all the infrastructure support in terms of setting up the infrastructure, machines, skilling center, and we run. So everybody does in what they are good at. So that's how the partnership works in urban areas. Then recently KVIC came up to us, and of course we do a lot of networking and collaborations, and we love doing that. So recently KVIC came us to us, and they said that Government of India and Government of Maharashtra is giving them a store in all the airports in Maharashtra, as well as in all the metro stations in Maharashtra. Now such a beautiful partnership that they are getting. So metro and airport agencies are giving a store. Again, they won't give it to me. They will give it to KVIC. So it's a government to government transaction, no tender. But KVIC does not have the strength to run the store and bring products and do all that. So that's how the partnership works in urban areas, unlike rural. And then all our cluster products, bamboo, khadi and clay and madhubani, will all go in the centers. And so it's such kind of partnership which go to scale, which go to impacting many people around, can happen only in urban areas. And rural, as I said, can be more traditional crafts, more institutional based. You create a producer group, you create a producer company, and that's how you focus them with market led products, innovative designs, taking local to global, classes to masses. These are some of the things which I believe are really important to uplift the craft sector as well as bring a paradigm shift into the sector. So these things, I believe rural and urban have a different interface to work on.
This is very interesting, and I think the whole partnership with local governance become very important everywhere, but I totally realize why municipal corporations and municipalities would play a very, very big role in actually bringing about the development that you have already done. And I think this is a very good model, uh, which, if we have the right partners, can be replicated across. But then that risk remains as well. I also wanted to ask you that do you think once this kind of a setup or a partnership is done, it is easier to market or to link with market the urban artisans or the urban craftspersons or the urban communities more than rural? What, what, how would you view the market responding to urban crafts and rural crafts, or uh, is the back end easier in urban than in rural?
I think consumer is boundary agnostic. They have nothing to do with whether it comes from rural, whether it comes from urban. They have to find a utility in the product, and that is the thing. And that is always we see there should not be a social cause behind buying a product. Social cause will be in your heart, but it should not be for the consumer. And because social cause will not take it to you long. So the beauty is there that there is a social cause. You work with sex workers, you work with differently abled children, you work with all that. There's a social cause. But when somebody buys a product, I think he buys as a consumer value. What value is going to get out of that? So irrespective of rural and urban, you have to work on the price points. You have to work on the seamless supply chains. You have to work on the quality of the product. And there cannot be any compromise on that. And more important is the honesty of the product, which is really, really important in the craft sector, because there is absolutely too much of influx of China made products and too much of machine made products so seamlessly that people are not able to differentiate. And I don't blame consumer for that. So somehow I don't think that those boundary would help. But in urban areas, of course, they have more exposure to the consumers, so they understand what works, what does not work. For rural areas, it is only either a Saras Mela or Suraj Kund or the Dilli Haat, some limited interventions. But urban are day in and day out, and that's why we do see that when we work with the urban center, productizing is faster. They learn very fast because they have understood that this will work, this don't work. They interact with the consumer much more than the rural. There is no doubt on that. And that is why when we work with rural also, it's our big effort to productize in a way which a urban consumer likes. And pardon me for my that effort, because sometimes we go from traditional to a bit of modern art, but then end of the day consumer is the king. Unless the product is marketed, you cannot make Madhubani, that style which is Madhubani with 6 kind of colors coming in and too much of god and goddesses and big human figures. Urban women do not wear such saris. 1 or 2 they would buy, but then the urban women and the buyers want monochrome. They want art at selected locations. They want innovation in the art, and that is all about. And of course, we were just discussing that quality and quantity is also important. When an urban consumer says that I want 1,000 boxes in Pattachitra with 30 days of timeline, then you have to adhere to some processes which are compromising on the hand art. Like you can do some tracing, and then you can do some some stencil work. Sometimes we do that. Sometimes we certainly do that. If we get an order to make a Madhubani yoke for 5,000 yokes, it is impossible to deliver in a 1 month saying that all yokes would be similar looking. Then we trace it. We do use a stencil. We teach them the processes to production. So with traditional art, you have to include some modern tools which do not sabotage the process of doing hand art, but some infusion of market-led design, some infusion of things which a consumer would like. So that has to be done. That we predominantly do in the rural areas, and in urban areas we work on very swift crafts and small craft like waste to wealth. Lot of fabric waste comes, we immediately convert them into animals or keychains or all such things. So urban products for us, especially for Tisser, urban product line is totally different, made from different angle, different perspective, and rural product line is slightly more traditional, over a period heritage based crafts. For us, it's clear demarcation.
This is very interesting. This we don't talk about these kinds of differentiations much when it comes to handicrafts, and we don't discuss at length. But there are so many different opportunities that are there differentiating the same sector in urban and rural India. So thank you, and your model is very interesting. I hope this can be replicated in other cities with successful partnerships with municipalities. So now I would like to go to Gauri from Sirohi. We got a chance to chat a little bit yesterday, and I was really thrilled to know about her position on women empowerment in the handicraft sector. She has been running a slow fashion luxury brand for some time and have had over a decade long experience of working with these communities. And so my question to you, Gauri, is why did you think of Sirohi as an initiative? What was your objective? And how did you successfully align it to bringing women to the fore in terms of their economic or social empowerment?
Hi everyone, I think this is my first panel as a craft-based entrepreneur, so I'm very excited to be here. So my name is Gauri and I run an artisan-backed brand called Sirohi, which focuses on making home decor and gifting products, so please do check it out. So the story of Sirohi begins, honestly, 30 years ago when I was 6 years old. I come from Muzaffarnagar city, which was, and if you Google it, it's known to be the crime capital of India. You know, it was in the news for all the wrong reasons. My parents sent me to boarding school when I was 6 years old to Dehradun, and I was a national level basketball player. I was an athlete. I won over 50 gold medals. You know, I was this overachiever who had essentially had this very independent life in boarding school. But when I would come home, I would see my mother. She's a master's degree student. She is educated. She wanted to work, but unfortunately had no opportunities in the city. And that was 100% of women around me. My bua, my mami, my chachi, everyone. So with a quick show of hands, how many of you had grandmothers who worked? 2, 3. How many of you had your mothers who worked? How many of you have sisters who work? Can you see how, I can see it, but the progression from your grandmothers to your mothers to your sisters has increased over time, right? But there was one thing common between all of them, was that they all had a skill, whether it was cooking, whether it was craft, stitching, that they all inherently had just because they were used in their own homes, right? Similar with my mom, she had this amazing skill of baking, and I would tell her, why are you always dependent on my dad for money? And I would get annoyed with her, not my father. So growing up, this has been a dichotomy that existed with me as a very young child. I went on to, do my master's in finance and economics from the University of Warwick. And the sequential lifestyle, I think 10 years ago, we always, corporate mein jana hai, banking, you'd be a lawyer. So I followed that sequential lifestyle. I went on to be a banker with Deutsche Bank, and essentially I was, the word that I said, I was numb. It was like cabin suicide, working. And then I decided to transition out. And in 2012, I started a not-for-profit called Skilled Samaritan the idea was using your existing skills to do some good, I started my work in a small village called Sirohi, and that's where the story of Sirohi begins. Long story short, in 2020, the world was shut down due to COVID. That is when I realized that the entrepreneur in me, I think, kind of came out, and I wanted to work in Muzaffarnagar, in my city, and that's where I saw a lot of women who were using charpoi. How many of you know what charpois are? So charpais is the quintessential, bed that existed in India, 300 years ago. I think anyone who comes from a small town knows that you had charpais in your angans. That skill existed in this city. It's a legacy skill, and women in this community were using charpai to weave products for their own homes. These were very conservative Muslim women who had never worked in their lives, and I discovered one woman who could do that. And I went to this village in Muzaffarnagar. Everyone said no, कि हम काम नहीं करेंगे, हमें काम करना allowed नहीं है, And that's the first time I heard this, कि काम करना allowed नहीं है. We started our work with one woman in 2020 when the world was shut down. Everything had to be brought online through technology. Thankfully, through Instagram, Pinterest, WhatsApp, I communicated designs to one artisan. Her name is Gauhar Fatma. She was in her burqa. She could not look me in the eye. And, when she first spoke to me, and today, 3 years later, Sirohi is a brand that uses technology to communicate designs to artisans to make products in the home and gifting category. We started with one artisan, and today we work with 750 artisans who we brought online, including my own mother. And she now leads cluster development for Sirohi, and she is very gainfully employed at Sirohi at the age of 62. So, what you said in terms of how we focus on women empowerment, I think it was passion. But I have realized something that, over the last 3 years, and I come from corporate myself, is that there are so many of us who will buy a product that is made by an artisan. There are so many of us who will buy a product for its story. And there is 100% of us who will buy a product because it's beautiful, well designed, and has a utilitarian aspect to it. And that's what Sirohi believes in, to be able to bring Indian craftsmanship to the global map. I think there is a gap there. There was Fab India 10 years ago. There is a Fab job. But I think it's time that our generation thought of craft not as something which is made by artisans or to support somebody, but created products that are functional, utilitarian for a global audience. And I think that's what successfully TISR is doing really well as well. And with supporters like HCL and many other foundations, it is time that the 3% that India contributes to the global handicrafts market, we need to change that, because India's first economy is obviously the agrarian economy, agriculture, and second is craft. There are 6 million people employed in craft, but why is it that we only contribute 3% to the global handicrafts market? And another stats is that in urban populations, by the way, there are only 7% women who are working, who are contributing to their homes' financial incomes. If you Google the stats, it's surprising, just 7%. So we need to change that. And I think, as we saw the stats here in the room itself, from our grandmothers to our mothers to our sisters, it's only changing. And I think craft is going to be a big contributor, but it should not be undervalued. And it should be looked at as something that can generate large-scale incomes, where some of our artisans at Sirohi are now buying land, e-rickshaws, in just 3 years. And I think that's one measurable impact that we've been able to create. So that's the story of Sirohi so far.
For the very the whole energy that you put in to tell us about your story. Wonderful. You have explained Sirohi's journey pretty well. We understand the motive and the journey. I just wanted to know that when you mobilize urban women to come forward and take up work in handicrafts or any kind of hand skill-based creative work, what kind of challenges do you face? Is it easier? Is it tougher? And do they get into it full-time, or does that remain like a very part-time thing within their regular household work? How does this whole thing work, considering that there is much more exposure and much more different kinds of opportunities in the urban sector as well?
We primarily work in Muzaffarnagar district. Women have never worked in that region. We're the first. You spoke about Saharanpur, Panipat, and all these regions that are known for craft. Muzaffarnagar was known for crime, and I guess we're the first people who are doing anything related to craft. So we're the currently we're the primary income generators for these artisans, and they're earning more than the men now in the communities. So we don't necessarily face a challenge, because what we did very successfully is that we leveraged the existing skill sets of the women. We went into their homes. We understood what are the products that they're making for their own homes, macrame, crochet, charpoys. And then we use technology. Of course, you've got Pinterest, YouTube. There's so much of content that exists from creators around the world. So how did we essentially take their existing skills, layer it with design, using technology, which we communicated just through WhatsApp, video calls. So we trained them actually in technology, not in design, not in craft. And that technology helped us create products that were functional. From, I think, the second aspect you said, that is it part-time, is it full-time? Honestly, with each artisan at Sirohi and 750 of them, it's full-time, because the products that we make are very relevant to the market. I don't know how many of us buy charpoys right now, and we still sell charpoys, but we've designed them and made them so functional and beautiful that people want them, and they don't buy it because they're supporting somebody. So the women are essentially generating incomes month on month, and they consider that their full-time employment. I think as we move on, and as we scale to enter geographies, where women have already had a skill and they're selling to communities, I think the most important thing to do is get them online. Because there's only so much that they can sell at a Delhi Haat or a local market. It is so important to be able to give them access to global consumerism. And I think online sales, when they know they can have access to global markets, not just Indian markets, that's when it becomes full time, because the orders keep coming in, and I think they keep increasing their income source through that.
Thank you. That's wonderful. So I would like to open up to the floor for questions for our panelists, and that would include the panelists themselves as well. If you want to ask questions to each other or make a point, and also to the audience.
Hi, my name is Millie Agarwal, and I just have a question, not in any particular to any particular panelist, but the general association with crafts product is that it's expensive, which actually it is. So, how do we sort of market it in a way that the consumer is able to appreciate what that value add on is, and it becomes a product which is just for the masses, not just for the classes?
So, and in fact, one of my tagline is classes to masses, because that is how we focus livelihood. I have only livelihood in mind. I have nothing to do with anything else. So livelihood can be generated by this way. So yes, I do agree they are costly, but not always. Not always. When you go to buy a Michael Kors and such branded products, they are 10 extra, but still you go and buy that. So I would not buy the statement that handicraft is costly to start with. But yes, if you want a Surat made chanderi, because chanderi is in Madhya Pradesh and Surat is in Gujarat, so there cannot be a Surat made chanderi by any standards. There cannot be a Jaipur ikat by any standard, because ikat is in Telangana and this is in Rajasthan. So there the real issue comes. The problem comes that people want to buy ikat. They want to buy chanderi. They want to buy Banarsi. They love it. But then there are people who are selling Surat chanderi for 800 rupees. Now it cannot be a chanderi. But why they put a chanderi tag? Because they know ki Nidhi ji would love to buy a chanderi. That's the main problem. They can say it's a sari. We don't have any problem saying that. They can say it's a Madhubani print. We do not have any problem with that. But the problem comes when they say Madhubani dupatta for 400 rupees. And it is full everywhere. A simple Madhubani dupatta, minimum will go 4,000, minimum will go 3,000. That is our problem. The problem is not about selling Madhubani, but then you don't call it a Madhubani, that is my problem. So you don't call it a Jaipur Ikat. You say it's a Jaipur block print. We are fine with it. But people know Ikat is geometric. So they'll print geometry in screen print and a block print. So that is why handicraft is suffering. Not because it is costly, because you are making wrong thing, calling them handicraft, and then confusing the customer to the core. That is the problem. Otherwise, there are huge number of products which are made by machine, and they are much more costlier than handicraft made products. It's not about the cost, it's about the honesty behind the product. And that is a typical problem. I don't know about the world, but India it is. I have no idea about how Vietnam is doing or how other countries are doing in terms of their craft and branding. So, but it does exist. There are many such portals. There is one portal called Karigiri, very popular. Not a single sari is about 3,000. So how can a handloom sari with Banarsi ऊपर से नीचे तक embroidery और पता नहीं क्या and how can it be in 3,000? It has to be 30,000. It has to be 15,000. That's the problem. But why do you name it Karigari then? So honesty is the problem, because of which the craft sector is suffering, not the price points.
I think I have a point to add here. I think, like you rightly said, that's one thing, but it's also about talking about why it is expensive, because people do question it a lot. So why don't we just answer it? So what we've tried to do at Sirohi is that, the difference between making a product, by screen print probably takes a few minutes, but handcrafting a product takes a few hours, and anything you attach in Japan, they say the moment the hand touches a product, the value goes 10x, and they appreciate that. So I think what we've tried to do at Sirohi is that with every product we write that this product took those many hours to make. This is the amount of textile waste used to make this product. This is the artisan who made the product. So people understand why it's expensive, and I think sometimes as entrepreneurs we need to answer those questions because they're being asked so frequently. So why not, versus fighting the rest of the world as to what they're doing, why they're doing it.
That's okay. I just wanted to add on to that is, will GI tagging help in all this? Because what is happening is the authentication is what you're saying. And while, this, I think the urban land also has a, within quotes, a branding. When you talk about, I buy organic became a fad. And everybody wanted to buy organic. Organic was expensive, but they didn't mind spending that expensive because somewhere it became a thing to have in. So with this GI tagging, will it help in authenticating all these products and therefore adding value to that product? So that when I buy something, it is GI tagged, and therefore I know, okay, I'm paying the right price for the right thing. Does it help? And I think there is a move towards that by the government anyway. So
yeah. So we are working very closely with Ministry of Textile as an agency, and we are working on only GI, and the objective is to identify new locations where GI don't exist, and where GI exists, working on a horizontal spread to give every artisan the GI tag. Now that will, in Sambalpuri we are working with them, in Khadi we are working with them. So I think GI would be the game changer. Like Alfonso, when it's Alfonso, it comes from Ratnagiri, and then it doesn't compete with Kesar and other things, because Kesar has a different taste and different price point, and Alfonso has a different taste and a different price point altogether. One dozen Kesar and one Alfonso, that's the equation. So if a GI tag is there, and the Ratnagiri people, and that happens with the cashew also. Ratnagiri cashew is very big and very tasty, whereas cashew coming from Goa and other regions are very small and not tasty. But they have a same price. So the GI tagging would be very very essential, and we work very closely with the Ministry of Textile to be, I mean, increase GI awareness and GI.
I have a very different viewpoint here, and again, I'll put in a bit of corporate, because we are kind of similar community talking to each other. The moment we step out, look at the challenge we are faced with. Look, think about the Gen Z, think about younger people. Of course, we have very young entrepreneurs sitting here, and she'll have the answers. But then, fusion is real. That's real. They would want, like, I will quote that. I mean, my own son was going for a robotics competition to South Korea, and they had to give these little gifts. And he said, "We like your eHeart portal, but do you have something which reflects technology within handicraft?" So, do you have that calendar that in ancient times people used to have in one place, and you could have calendar of thousands of years? So it's also about researching your own tradition and culture. Not that young people are disrespectful, but they're intrigued with something which is also innovative and which does provide handy answers. So it's also about respecting what the new consumer is looking for. Fusion is reality. There's no problem if ikat comes from one place and block printing from another and Madhubani, but they may want everything all together. That's one. The second is, as we call it in development sector, is, and here I'm wearing a typical hat of my development professional, is development education. If we expect the consumer behavior to change, we have to go to the textbooks. We are teaching everything in history but not our own art and culture. Which block produces what in India? I mean, if aspirational districts Niti Aayog is planning, I think the first piece of research is what is coming from this particular block. Let's put that in the textbooks also. We should know, and India is a very good demography for us to kind of propagate the message globally. We are the biggest population, for that matter. We are spread across the world. So I think that message will go, because we are going out for jobs, and we can always use those vehicles for spreading the message that yes, this handicraft is important. The other thing is durability, scalability, to be able to keep to the quality. These are all typical marketing challenges. I think we got to keep to them. While we are thinking of charpais and we are thinking of boxes, look at the big corporate buildings which are all glass and which are one type of chair and one type of desks. The day handicraft and art and tradition enters those spaces, and we are able to provide warm seating arrangements and solutions, and which the new generation will appreciate, I think we would have won the big challenge here. Because they want, our own My Display eHeart center, the display center we have, when a client step out, and first thing our marketing team asks us, वहाँ कैसा होगा, गंदगी तो नहीं होगी, कोजी है कि नहीं है, क्वालिटी कैसा हो, because a campus, you come to a campus, spick and span, neat and clean. The moment you step out, obviously you are. So why don't we bring that in? And that's where I think your operations people are going to ask you 5,000 questions. I mean, you can have thatch roof, beautiful design, something you can do, but that is so. Challenge has to be taken. It will not be an easy sale, and we might hit a blind wall. And Gaurav and I were discussing in the car that new generation is also minimalistic in many ways. It's also sports inclined, they might just want to wear sports clothing throughout their lives because they find it comfortable. Are we providing those answers? Are we even thinking about that? So we really need to step up. We really need to step up this sector. And that's where, when you ask me that question about CSR funding, we keep asking, uske baad fir kya? Uske baad fir kya? Phir kya? Is it money gone? How does it? So those are certain questions we must kind of, keep in mind while designing our work.
Yeah.
So, very interestingly, some of our biggest partners, and I'm going to say it very openly, is WeWork. WeWork is a New York-based brand, a co-working space, which is setting up offices in India, and they have this interesting concept where every city that they set up a WeWork in, they will use the local craft to be able to incorporate that in the WeWork office to make it very functional and represent, and I think what you said, we do see a lot of architects, a lot of interior designers reaching out to us to bring the charpoy back. It's displayed in some of the biggest design spaces here in India. So I think the corporates also need to kind of step in. So hopefully HCL next will be taking that step. I got this. um, uh, yeah, I in the cafeterias. Why don't we start with that?
Yeah. So thank you, especially. Yeah, I'll come to you. So though I have been asked to wrap up, that would be the last question.
I
You
can
were
quickly
also
I can
waiting,
quickly squeeze one in.
but I would just like to mention here that, first of all, your vision. I hope it just spreads and it percolates and it's taken up across the country, because very few will have visions like this, and this is so wonderful to hear. Second thing I wanted to just mention is that you would know that there are 6 cities in India which have got the UNESCO Creative Cities tag, and 2 of them, Jaipur and Srinagar, have got it for craft and folk art. So that gives a huge leverage for the city as a whole to promote the craft and art form, and in a very integrated way. So what Meghaji was saying, what Dr. Nidhi is saying, what Gauri is saying, all these can really get integrated very well, provided the local administration takes up the challenge of really turning the creative city tag into a reality. With that, I will be able to take one question, and then I will have. Is it okay if I take 2 questions? Okay. So I think he has been.
Okay, no, it's okay. Real quick.
I'll come to you.
So just building upon what Dr. Nidhi was saying about how do we get capital beyond CSR? This is a question to you, Gauri, someone who's seen your journey and also as a consumer of your products. I appreciate the point about consumers being willing to pay the premium, if one can call it that, for quality products. But when will investors be willing to pay that? What has been your experience of different types of capital, whether it's impact investing, blended finance, ESG, both for the enterprises themselves and for the end users, right? Because this has been a big challenge. So what is your view on how do we bring more capital into the space?
Hey Karthik, good to see you. So essentially, I think for us, we've always focused on building a brand, and we are very consumer centric. We're building a brand for the consumers that talks about taking Indian craft to the world, and we already have a global vision. So I think that's where impact investing comes in. We are funded by an impact investor in the US. So I think that validates what we're already doing in multiple ways. Essentially, I think when you see our numbers, when you see our books, yes, CSR I think is used to fuel the working capital needs that are required for building stock. When you talk about of course VC at the end of it, or impact investment, they want to return on the investment in a few years. So I think CSR comes in to sort of fuel that growth, but at the end of it needs to be a self-sustaining enterprise, wherein essentially the sale of your products should be able to help you fuel the growth as well. So the need for CSR after a while becomes redundant, and then essentially as an enterprise you're able to focus on growth through the sales of your products, especially in the craft space. I think the moment we move away from thinking artisan, impact, livelihoods, and focus on product, I think that's where investment will start coming in, because that's where you will be able to see a return. And some of the things that you mentioned around blended finance, ESG goals, these are some of the things that we're already solving for, because craft essentially, I think traditionally craft was made from local fibers, materials that were in the vicinity of a craftsperson, right? So I think that's what a lot of crafts are already doing. And I think in our case at Sirohi, as you are a consumer of our products as well, we focus on creating premium products because we want people to inherently believe that craft is premium. You know, we don't want it to be undervalued and think that artisan ne banaya hai, lady ne banaya hai. So I think changing that narrative helps drive investment into the space as well.
Thanks, Gauri. That's the last question.
Yeah,
we are
I
taking.
had a
Thank you.
question related to scale. Like whenever we talk of craft, one of the questions that comes to mind that is very restrictive to scale. Like even in handloom, other than Fab India, how Fab India has become a household name. There's almost none other brand which is like become as popular or as reachable like Fab India. So like in craft, there is almost no example like that. So what restricts scale of a brand in crafts, and how can we overcome that? Because only then we can actually our outreach and impact can be more.
I'll take that, and ma'am, maybe then you can. So I think, ma'am, wait for it. We'll get there. It's just been 3 years, and we'll become a lot more Fabo, I'm sure. But essentially, I think what Fab India did very successfully, and like any brand, for it to become a household name, is that it should cater to every house, which means that it needs to have a diversity of products. It cannot just focus on one aspect. So for us, we focus on charpoy weaving, and for the last 3 years, we've been trying to strengthen one cluster. But I think the moment you increase the categories that exist on your platform, that caters to a home, to the kitchen, to the living room, to the bedroom, to the drawing room, then I think it attracts a lot more people to come in and find the product that they're looking for from one platform itself. So it's about aggregating all the crafts from different spaces, finding the most utilitarian, functional products that are well designed, that are relevant to today's buyers. Which maybe even combines technology in some ways, and that's how I think it becomes a household name, over time, because everybody can find what they're looking for in one platform. That's what I think, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
So for me, scale is more from the livelihood perspective, and it's not about the product which we are talking. So when we talk of scale, we bring Catalyst as a technology, and right, not technology as only as a platform, but a supply chain, a digital interface, a app where they can use in local language, work in local language, technology on the looms, as we are doing together as a kosha device for the honesty of the loom. So technology is one very big aspect which we personally feel can bring scale to the sector. The second catalyst could be partnerships, which very core, because there are different types of partnerships at all level. One, of course, is the international market and exporters, and then local partnerships, government partnerships. There are so many government programs and the artisans, and also bringing everything, all stakeholders together, aligning them could be is the second thing. And third is basically, as you said, product is important, so designing market led products could be the third way to scale it up. And of course, Fab India did it, but maybe 30 years journey with so much of international funds, and like her and mine are all self-driven, with zero support from any initially. With we don't have even impact venture, we did not go for that. And so basically the idea is that how we build it and bring that paradigm shift through our networks, through our learnings, through our partnerships, and maybe over a period we should be able to come up with some alternative for Fab India, maybe in near future. We also do hope to be that, but I'm sure it would not be one brand. I'm sure it would be a lot of brands put together and coming up together. That I would look at scale. I would not look, say, okay, now see, there is Fab India and then there is Tisser. No, I do not have that vision. I am saying there could be hundreds of local brands which we support as an ecosystem player, and those brands all come up, and then together we fight this poverty, this livelihood, and this scale. Because in this sector, I do not believe there's any competition. It's such a sector where only collaboration can work, and multiple thousands and thousands of brands can come and rise to a level where we can compete and be global. I come from that kind of vision for scale.
There's one big gap which I think we must look at is the dearth of human capital. See, everybody is depending on that artisan who's nowhere in the picture. I mean, I don't know who's actually working with their own hand in this group also. Who knows weaving, who knows real stuff. So, in order to bring them into the human capital mainstream, I think there is a need for investment in education, higher education. How many universities are giving those degrees where you combine economics with the local trade? So, we really need to think ahead and advocate for. And why can't an artist be given a proper degree? Is it just about speaking good English and being technology enabled? Is that not an education? So I think we really need to work holistically and fill that human capital gap also, because what we are preparing is mostly engineers, doctors, and maybe a lot of streams have come in, communications and so on and so forth, marketing, but this particular human capital preparedness is not happening. So there is a need for us to also essentially bring in specialized courses where we are not looking at regular education system. We are looking at a very different education system for them, and that will bring in a huge human capital to the segment.
So innovation is the way forward for breaking free from whatever has been happening and looking at new models and new initiatives. With that, I thank my panelists and my audiences for being so interactive and so lively and to take the discussions forward. Thank you very much. We are closing the session.
Thank you so much. I must say it was a very honest session. I enjoyed it thoroughly, and I hope the audience as well. So here I request you to take this kit as token of appreciation, please. Yeah, and then join here for a group photo. And I request the audience to kindly sit here for our next session. That will be, I'm handing it over to Shubhangi. Thank you.